Good morning, colleagues. Please be seated. We will start in a minute. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Implementation. Dear colleagues, good morning. Welcome back to the third meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Implementation. You will recall that at our last plenary, we stopped at paragraph 3 of CRP 8 under agenda item 11. Before returning to this document and agenda item 11, I would like to turn our attention to the outstanding CRPs and their other items. And for this session, I would like to try a different approach. During the second part of SBI-3, several agenda items had already been discussed thoroughly in contact groups and friends of the chair groups. And many of those items are also directly linked to the development of a GBF. Today, I would like to begin by taking up the CRPs that have emerged from those groups. Since they have already been the subject of intense discussions, I hope that we will be able to review and approve them quickly. I would also like to prioritize agenda items, as I said, that are directly linked to the global biodiversity framework. We will then resume our consideration of the CRPs under agenda item 11, either later today or at a future plenary session. During this meeting, the SBI has had 5 contact groups actively at work. We will begin by considering the outputs from these groups and take up the following items. Under agenda item 6 on resource mobilization and the financial mechanism, we will review CRP 15 Rev 1 on resource mobilization and CRP 20 on the financial mechanism, with a view of approving them. Under agenda item 7 on capacity building, technical and scientific cooperation, technology transfer, knowledge management, and communication, we will review a draft recommendation contained in CRP 13 Rev 1 with a view to approving it. Under agenda item 9 on mechanisms for reporting, assessment, and review, we will review CRP 5 Rev 1 on options to enhance planning, reporting, and review mechanisms with a view to approving it. And under agenda item 5 on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, we will review CRP 18 on the Gender Plan of Action and CRP 14 Rev 1 on the Implementation Plan and Capacity Building Action Plan for the Katashina Protocol, with a view to approving them. If time allows, we'll continue with item 5 and review CRP 17 on communications for the Global Biodiversity Framework, and review CRP 9 on other matters related to the Global Biodiversity Framework, with a view to approving them. Before turning our attention to the first item, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat to provide us with information. Information for taking the floor, and the Secretariat has just reminded me that I forgot to mention that if time permitting, we will also, of course, come back to SBI agenda item 11 and start with CRP 8 and then CRP 16. But I said it's only time permitting, but it's on the agenda. So please, if we do very well, maybe we make it. So I will now like to give the floor to the Secretariat to provide us with information for taking the floor. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As requested by the Bureau, I would like to remind delegates to always wear their masks. Unfortunately, COVID is still with us, and we must continue to take the necessary precautions and follow the required health and safety measures. I don't think I need to make any more announcements on how to use buttons and all, so I will hand it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Let us now turn to our first agenda item. Distinguished delegates, let us now turn to agenda item 6, resource mobilization and the financial mechanism. Colleagues, you will recall that at our first plenary meeting on the 14th March, we requested the contact group for this agenda item, led by Ms. Ines Velay of Belgium and Mr. Jonizani Munshedzi of South Africa, to continue its work. The group was successful in advancing our work, and on the basis of its outcomes, I have prepared 2 conference room papers containing draft recommendations. I propose that we begin our consideration of CRP 15 Rev 1 on resource mobilization. You will recall from report of the co-chairs of a contact group that the contact group advanced its work on the draft recommendation, but could not finalize its consideration. Paragraphs 26 to 40 and Annex 1 remain to be considered. In addition, a number of parties presented new concepts for possible inclusion, and those were compiled as placeholders in a new section in Annex 2. There is no brackets in this new section because the individual subsections provide concept or placeholders for concepts that were newly introduced and require further consideration. The footnote to this new section explains this. Annex 1, however, contains brackets as it was considered by plenary during the first part of SBI-3, and the suggestions made by parties are reflected in the document. So this draft recommendation has been thoroughly reviewed and discussed over the course of several meetings, up to paragraph 25, where parties share their views and perspectives, and this already reflects a fair balance of views expressed by parties. Considering the unfinished business at hand, I'm currently consulting with the Bureau, the contact group co-chairs, and the Secretariat that what can be done to expedite the work and enable COP15 to consider this important item in an efficient manner. I will inform you of the outcome of this consultation at a future plenary. So, I would therefore, based on the explanations and the good work in the contact group that are taking place, I would like to present this draft recommendation contained in CRP 15 Rev 1 for approval and conversion into an L document. Is that agreeable? Yes. Yeah, I see no comments. So CRP 15 Rev 1, oh, sorry, the EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to all colleagues. We very much support your approach. We believe that there will be ample room for further discussions at the COP especially. We just had a very minor suggestion in relation to the section additional elements on resource mobilization, where we would suggest to have a consistent practice across CRPs in relation to new text that was not discussed in the contact group. And so that would be really just a practical suggestion to introduce square brackets around this section from page 10 to 13.
Thank you, the EU. Yes, I think if that can comfort you, I can do that. I put the square bracket at additional elements, that part is done. So I will then go back, and I therefore like to present this draft recommendation containing CRP 15 Rev 1 for approval with the square brackets just mentioned by the EU. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And without trying to reopen discussions, we think that the preambular paragraph in page 2, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, so the sixth preambular paragraph in page 2, that starts with acknowledging the interlinkages and possible cross-fertilization, was not thoroughly discussed. So we would request to keep that paragraph in brackets for further discussion.
Yes, Argentina, we put also that preamble paragraph in brackets. And then I have Senegal on my list. You have the floor.
Merci.
22 March.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am making this statement on behalf of the African Group. The African Group has taken stock of progress to date in negotiations since the resumption of Substa 24 and SBI-3. After 2 weeks from the start of the meeting, we see that progress of the negotiations are insufficient. We will continue toward Kunming in discussions in the group and SBI on resource mobilization and the finance mechanism for capacity building, and to date, progress remains insufficient. Africa believes that it is urgent that we adopt the global framework, and we remain very committed to the adoption of documents in Kunming this year. Moreover, Africa is committed to bringing improved documents to Kunming. With a view to recovery, and in this respect, the African Group believes it is urgent to call a formal meeting for the resumption of Substa before COP15 to discuss the following items. 1, continue discussions on resource mobilization and finance mechanisms. 2, capacity building and the review mechanism. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senegal, and I thank you for your statement. I would just inform you that it will be a discussion in the Bureau tomorrow, but it's intersessional work, so I think it could be handled at that discussion. But for now, I don't want to reopen the debate on this, so I therefore present this draft recommendation containing CRP 15 Rev 1 with the 2 brackets presented for approval. I see no objection, is so agreed. We will produce an L document of this item for consideration at a later date. So, distinguished delegates, let us now turn to the draft recommendation on the financial mechanism, in particular elements of guidance to the Global Environmental Facility, contained in document CBD, SBI-3, CRP 20. And again, I would like to thank the contact group and its co-chairs for their work. Let me say a few words about the document that we have before us. The draft recommendation comprises 3 preamble paragraphs and 4 operative paragraphs of clean text and an annex. Para 1 recommends the COP the 4-year framework of program priorities for GEF 8 contained in the annex. Para 2 is aimed at the participants in the GEF 8 replenishment negotiations, which convenes its final meeting next month. Para 3 outlines the components of a draft consolidated guidance to GEF that the subsidy body expects the Executive Secretary to prepare for consideration by the COP. And Para 4 recommends to the COP 2 paragraphs to include in its consolidated guidance to the GEF. The first of these contains a few elements of alternative text in brackets, and the second is bracketed entirely because of the divergent views among parties. A decision on the proposed text can be made by the COP. The annex contains the recommended 4-year framework of program priorities for the 8 replenishment period of a GEF. In the contact group, parties reach agreement on most aspects of this 4-year framework. Some brackets remain in the text. Many of these reflect the fact that the post-2020 global biodiversity framework is still to be negotiated. For example, we do not know yet whether it contains milestones in addition to goals and targets. Others reflect a divergence of views that would require considerable time to try to resolve, and at the end of the day might only be resolved at COP. Delegates, I would therefore like to propose that we approve this CRP. If you agree, the draft recommendation it contains will be brought back to plenary in an L document for the subsidy body to make up on Monday. It would be considered together with CBD, SBI-3, L3, which also addresses the financial mechanism and which has been carried forward to the resume session from the first part of SBI-3 held last year. Therefore, as we did for the draft recommendation on the resource mobilization, I would like to present the draft recommendation on the financial mechanism contained in CRP 20 for approval and conversion into an L document. And I see no objections. Is so agreed? So we will produce an L document for this item for consideration at a later date. Thank you so much. Distinguished delegates, let us now turn to the next item for consideration. Let us now turn to agenda item 7 on capacity building, technical and scientific cooperation, technology transfer, knowledge management, and communication. Distinguished delegates, you will recall that the contact group for this agenda item was established at the first part of SBI-3 and continued its work at this meeting. The group was successfully co-chaired by Mr. Hajo Hanstra of the Netherlands and Ms. Laura Bermudez of Colombia. The group met 2 times and made considerable progress in removing bracketed text. They also made use of a Friends of a Chair group to develop compromise proposals. The co-chairs have produced a draft recommendation on capacity building and development, technical and scientific cooperation, and technology transfer as contained in document CBD, SBI, 3, CRP 13, Rev 1. Before we begin our review, I understand that there have been informal consultations among delegates to find a solution to some of the brackets in the document. I would like to give the floor to the co-chairs of a contact group to update us on the outcomes of those consultations. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Hajo Hanstra of the Netherlands. Hajo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Regarding your question, yes, we had some consultations on the first paragraph of the CRP, and regarding the first part of that sentence, which says taking note or either the alternative welcoming, and there seems to be consensus on going for the word taking note of, so then the brackets around taking note could be lifted, and welcoming between brackets could be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Hajo Hanstra, and thank you for your work on trying to solve this very important bracket. So you heard that the result of a consultation was to delete welcoming and use taking note of in the beginning of the document. So also, distinguished delegates, also this document has been the subject of considerable discussion and debate already at this session.
Actually, we have to ask Laura also to read in another paragraph.
Okay, sorry. And sorry if I come back. I missed to ask Laura. I think I understood that there has been some consultation on another bracket as well, so maybe we can take the other one as well. Colombia, you on the floor. Sorry. So can the microphone be given to Colombia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the same way, as my colleague have said, we had some consultations with some parties regarding to delete the words according to their capabilities that we can see in some of the operative paragraphs, because we already agree on one paragraph in relation with this matter in the preambular section. So the suggestion is to delete the reference about according to their capabilities in the operative paragraphs and keep, because we have the already agreed preambular paragraph that reads as follows. One second, please. Noting that the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework are related decisions are to be implemented in accordance with national priorities and capabilities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bermudez, and thank you for your work to try to solve this, also these brackets. It's very helpful, and I think it's clear. So, distinguished delegates, you have heard the proposed changes from the two co-chairs. Oh, the EU, you had the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the co-chairs for solving some of the brackets. I just have a question about paragraph 7, because up there at the end it also mentions and in accordance with national priorities and legislation. Does this also will this also be deleted, or we keep the brackets up there? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, EU. Yes, in this case, the bracket will be kept. I hope it's clear. Thanks. Okay, now I hope everything is clear. And you have heard the proposed changes from the co-chairs. And as said, this document has also been subject to considerable discussion and debate at this session. So I would therefore like to present the draft recommendation on the CRP 13 Rev 1 for approval and conversion into an L document. And I see no objection, is so agreed. Yeah. So thank you so much, colleague. I think we are doing very well together. Thank you so much. I'm very happy about that. So, colleagues, I said that we'll now turn to agenda item 9, but I have been, as you may note, it's not yet published in all languages yet. So I will therefore turn to agenda item 5 and the gender plan of action, and then go back again to SBI agenda item 9. So if you need to just rearrange. So I will now invite you to consider agenda item 5 on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, starting with the gender plan of action. So, distinguished delegates, I now invite you to consider agenda item 5 on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. You will recall that we are considering several issues under this agenda item. For today's discussion, we'll begin by reviewing a draft recommendation on the gender plan of action for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, contained in document CBD, SBI-3, CRP 18. And after the gender plan of action, we'll also review the draft recommendation on the implementation plan and capacity building action plan for the Katashina protocol, contained in document CRP 14 Rev 1. And I will then go to CRP 17 on the communications plan for the post-2020 period, and CRP 9 on other matters related to the Global Biodiversity Framework, with a view to approving them. So I would first like to take up the draft recommendation on the gender plan of action contained in document CBD, SBI-3, CRP 18. You will recall that we convened the contact group for this item, co-chaired by Mr. Scott Wilson of Canada and Ms. Melissa Laverde of Colombia, as well as a Friends of a Chair group led by Ms. Camila Cepeda Lizama of Mexico. Both groups made good progress, and I thank them for their hard work. And I would now like to present the draft recommendation containing document CBD, SBI-3, CRP 18 for approval and conversion in an L document. And as said before, I think this document has been thoroughly discussed in the contact group and the Friends for Chair, so I hope we can agree to just approve it and convert it into an L document. So I would now like to present the draft recommendation containing documents CBD, SBI, 3, CRP 18 for approval and conversion into an L document. Is that agreeable? The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EU would just like to ask the Secretariat to make some changes and streamline the mention of the plan towards the documents and have it as a gender plan of action, because there are several times where it's identified as the post-2020 gender plan of action, so we would like to have it streamlined. And we would love to have the quotation of the objective of the convention rights, as it's mentioned, benefits arising from the utilization of, and we would have to it corrected as benefit arising out of, according to the objective of the convention. Thank you.
Thank you, the EU. Okay, thank you, the EU. I just talked to the Secretariat. They will make sure that the text is streamlined so it's correct. Thank you for pointing that out. The Democratic Republic of Congo, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup pour la...
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Madam Chair. We regret that you left so early, but in the statement that has been read out by Senegal on behalf of the African group, in the place where we said that all of the CRPs that are directly linked to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which will be approved soon, should stay within square brackets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Democratic Republic of Congo. I think that, well, as I see it, everything will be agreed at COP, but as a symbolic, we of course can put square brackets, so to give some comfort on that, as requested. Okay, I will now go back to this gender plan of action, and we make sure, the Secretary will make sure that the text is streamlined. So I would now like to present the draft recommendation containing document CBD SBI-3 CRP 18 for approval and conversion into L document. I hope that is agreeable. I see no objection. Is so agreed? We will produce an L document for this item for consideration at a later date. Thank you, colleagues. We are working so quickly, so it takes some time to rearrange also here at the podium. So, distinguished delegates, let us now turn to the draft recommendation on the post-2020 implementation plan and capacity building action plan for the Katashina protocol contained in document CRP 14 Rev 1. For this item, you will recall the contact group that met during part 1 of the meeting continued the discussion at this meeting and attempted to resolve brackets in their CRP. They had a meeting, and I understand they made good progress. The contact group was co-chaired by Rita Andorko from Hungary and Rigobert Neptep from Cameroon. I would now like to give the floor to the co-chairs to report on their work and introduce their document. Ms. Rita Andorko of Hungary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The contact group met on Thursday evening. The group had a mandate to consider the columns on indicators and actors in the capacity building action plan, and also the issue of whether the plans should be presented in one decision or split into two separate decisions. There was general support for keeping the column on indicators on and a number of amendments to the indicator column were made. On the actors column, many parties expressed the view that the column should be deleted as it had no added value. However, a group of parties wished to retain it so the column remains bracketed. A couple of alternate operative paragraphs were proposed for the decision to replace the column on actors. These were also bracketed. On the question of one decision or two, there was agreement to present the plans in two separate decisions. The Secretariat was mandated to split the elements of the draft decision. There was a very good spirit in the room, and the group worked efficiently in going through the document and completing its work. Before concluding my report, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of you who contributed in a very efficient and constructive way to this process, including the biosafety experts, delegate parties, observers, IPSCs, and also a big appreciation to my co-chair, Rigobert Nepp from Cameroon, and last but not least, to the Secretariat. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and thanks to both of you for your hard work, and I think it was very good to hear your progress. As you will see in this revised CRP 14, the two plans are now presented under two separate decisions as per the request from the contact group. In keeping with the request of the contact group, the decisions have also been simplified where possible. As we did for the other draft recommendations, I would like to present this draft recommendation on the post-2020 implementation plan and capacity building action plan for the Katashina protocol contained in document CRP 14 Rev 1 for approval and conversion into an L document. And I see that Algeria has asked for the floor. Algeria, you have the floor. Algeria, are you asking for the floor?
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you very much. I apologize for coming back to the previous dubbing. It's on the CRP 18. Algeria would like to request that this document should be placed between square brackets. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Algeria. And as I said earlier on, all those CRP that, on the request that all CRP that are linked with EBF are placed in square brackets. That's done. So if there are any comments on on CRP 14 Rev 1, I see the EU. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you very much for all of the work that you have been doing with regards to the strengthening of the capacity of the Cartagena Protocol. We'd like to stress that we think that there might be some paragraphs missing at the end of the draft recommendation for the capacity building document. We could add some paragraphs on mid-term assessment with regards to the Cartagena Protocol, and we will get back to you a little bit later on with some suggested language for these paragraphs. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have tried to streamline the language, but I think I asked the Secretary to explain that the text you're asking for is already in the document. So please, the Secretariat, if you could explain.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, in the draft decision for the Capacity Building Action Plan, which is in Section B of the CRP, paragraph 8 of that draft decision refers to conducting a midterm evaluation of the Capacity Building Action Plan in conjunction with the midterm evaluation of the implementation plan. And then there is a footnote there with a cross-reference to, which will be to the decision by which the implementation plan is adopted. So that is the decision in Part A of the CRP. And the intention of taking this approach was to keep the decision as simplified and streamlined as possible, as was requested during the contact group and as just indicated by the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I hope that this explanation, with that explanation is agreed. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I have Paraguay on my list and then Colombia. Paraguay, you have the floor. Paraguay, you have the floor.
Now I do. Thank you, Chair. And I'm so sorry to come back to CPR 18, but I have some brackets to remove, which I think are good news. But I also have one more bracket to add, which I don't think it's great news. But we're in a condition to remove all the brackets regarding the benefit sharing that we had placed in that document. But however, we do have one more bracket to add. And I understand that Algeria requested the entire document to be in brackets too. So I think there's still room for changes.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, colleagues, I have already approved this CRP. It's very good news. I'm happy to hear about the news that you can remove bracket, but I would suggest we take this when we come back to the L document.
Okay, thank you.
And if you inform the Secretary, I'm sorry, because I don't want to go back now when I have approved it. But we take note of this. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I will give the floor to Colombia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We acknowledge all the efforts that were made for the elaboration of these documents. We only have a small comment, as we understand that there was consensus on adopting both plans in separate decisions. We suggest that the paragraph of decision CP-97 should be retained only for the decision that adopts the implementation plan, and the paragraph of decision CP-93 only just for the one that adopts the capacity building action plan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I will ask the Secretariat to read out the proposed amendments so it's clear to everybody. The Secretariat.
Thank you very much. And if we correctly understood the proposal from Colombia, the suggestion would be in Section A, the decision for adopting the implementation plan for the protocol, to delete the third preambular paragraph, which is the paragraph beginning also recalling decision CP 9/3. Furthermore, again, if we understood correctly, the proposal would be in Section B, in the decision to adopt the capacity building action plan for the protocol, to delete also there the third preambular paragraph, which is the paragraph beginning also recalling decision CP 9/7. I hope this is indeed what the proposal was from Colombia. If not, I'm sure they can clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Colombia, could you clarify, have we captured your proposal correctly?
Yes, Madam Chair, our proposal was well captured. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the clarification. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. South Africa would like to retain the original wording. We believe there is value in keeping both paragraphs. Thank you.
Okay, Colombia, could you maybe accept to keep a text? Or otherwise, we can, of course, put it in square brackets. Colombia?
Yes, Madam Chair, it will be acceptable for us. It's not a critical issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we keep a text. Thank you so much for your consideration. Okay, colleagues, with that, I would like to present this draft recommendation on the post-2020 implementation plan and capacity building action plan for the Katashina protocol contained in document CAP 14, Rev 1, for approval and conversion into an L document. I hope that is agreeable. I see no objection. Is so agreed? We will produce an L document for this item for consideration at a later date. Thank you so much. Distinguished delegates, we have now considered almost all CRPs that were discussed in contact groups at this session. We will come back on the CRP on SBI agenda item 9 when all the languages are published. And as hope, and I thank you all for your cooperation, we have moved at a much quicker pace, and I thank you for your cooperation and flexibility with this. Thank you so much. As we are currently considering item 5, I now propose that we begin our review of a draft recommendation on communications for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework as contained in document CBD, SBI-3, CRP 17. And I would now like to go through this document. It has not been discussed in the contact group, so I would like to go through it paragraph by paragraph. Or maybe I can try to take it section by section, since we are in such a cooperative mode. So let's try with that. I will begin and see if we can agree on we can go through this document section by section, and I start with the first section under background, the 3 paragraphs. Are there any comments on those 3 paragraphs? No, I see none. These 3 paragraphs are approved. Let's move on to the next section, section number 2, communication, access to information, and awareness and behavior change. And that section continues from para 4 until 12. Until para 12. So from para 4 until para 12. And I see I have a request on the floor from the Russian Federation, followed by Argentina. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We should like to suggest in paragraph 11 to delete the paragraphs and the one that starts with "but will also needs to have an impact" on intention and planning, so to delete that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Russian Federation. I just would like to note that this text is already in square brackets. So if that is acceptable to keep it in square brackets, Russian Federation? Okay, thank you so much. Are there any more comments on section 2? Argentina. Argentina, did you ask for the floor or? No? Okay. So, no? Okay, good. So, no more comments on the section 2, para 4 until para 12. I see no request for the floor. So, those paras from para 4 until para 12 is agreed. Let's move on to section 3, scope and purpose of a strategy. And this section is from para 13 until para 17.
Actually, let's see. I just want to take a look in your choreography because I think it's, yes, 13 to 18.
Yes, the EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm speaking on behalf of the EU, and it's 27 member states. We're going at great speed, which we very much welcome, which makes it a bit challenging to capture all the things which I would like to say. But I think we have some question. Well, perhaps first of all, in paragraph 14, paragraph 15. That's where we would like to add after the reference to, in paragraph 14, apologies, let me just check one thing because it's, in paragraph 14, there's the need to add after, assisted by experts in communications. We would like to bring back, I think actually, and behavioral change. It's important that we have expertise not only from the colleagues in communication, but also those working on behavioral change. And I think that's all for this section, but perhaps you can just complete first this one.
Yes, thank you. The EU, so the proposal is to add in para 14 after assisted by experts in communication, it will add and behavioral change. I give the floor to Argentina, followed by Morocco. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And well, we see in this recommendation that it's draft, and we will have to further discuss that many references to behavioral change are in brackets. So we would request to keep this reference by the EU also in brackets. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. We put that text in brackets. Morocco, followed by South Africa. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize to go back to the approach that we adopted today, I see that, of course, we want to gain as much time as possible because we have a lot of text to review, but isn't it not also important to invite to send all of these brackets to COP? I think it's important to eliminate the brackets. So wouldn't it be wise today to, at least in each section that we go through, to have to look at just the text that's in brackets and see if we can delete them? I don't think we can say that we can adopt a section if there are still brackets therein. And have a better drafting. I think the idea is to lessen the workload for the COP. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. Thank you very much. And I do understand your concern, and I also think that it's useful that we do as much as possible in this session. What I would suggest then is that I can ask if anybody would like to lift its brackets, but I will not have a discussion on each bracket because, unfortunately, I don't think we have time for that. But I could, of course, ask if party would like to lift their brackets. And as always, I also encourage informal consultations among parties. So it will. Thank you so much. So if there are any brackets that can be lifted in this section, please let me know. I give the floor to South Africa, followed by Egypt. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Actually, I also wanted to request that we bracket the reference around and behavioral change as proposed by EU. Thank you.
Yes, and it's in brackets already. Egypt, followed by Togo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree with Moroccan colleague that it is not only one or two brackets, it is too many brackets. So yes, we appreciate that we are going fast, but at the same time, at least you go paragraph by paragraph or what. We are moving very fast. We couldn't follow up with what is going on. Even in the screen, when you look at the screen, it hasn't changed for almost half an hour. I still deal with CRB 18 and whatever. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Togo, you have the floor.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like Egypt, Togo would like to propose that we take a look at those paragraphs where there are brackets. I think that would help us move ahead. Now, I don't know if I heard some comments on paragraph 17, and I don't know if now is the right time for me to intervene on that.
Thank you, Togo. Yes, please, if you have any comment on para 17, you can present them. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, on paragraph 17, this is in brackets, of course, and we suggest saying after communication instead of immediately, as of adoption, the parties should start implementing framework elements for communication. Instead of saying immediately, we should say as soon as it's adopted. or upon adoption. We think that's important to give states leeway. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, could you please repeat your proposal so we are sure we know exactly where in para 17 it should be added? Thanks.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam. Instead of immediately without delay, we could say as soon as it is adopted. It's paragraph 17. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, colleagues. I would suggest that the only comments I heard so far on section 3 is in para 14, where the EU would like to add in communication and behavioral change, but it was requested to be in brackets for 2 delegations. And then we did have a proposal in para 17, where immediately should be replaced by as soon as it is adopted. I think if I hear any comments on the suggestion, I think we had talked about 14 already, but 17, the Canada followed by the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if you want us to comment on paragraph 18, the table, or if you want to resolve the paragraph 17. I know that there's some options there. I can keep my comments for the table once we address 17, but I'm in your end. Thank you.
I think we need to come back to the table. So I would like to solve this first. Thank you. The EU?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I ask for your indulgence, but perhaps first of all, for paragraph 14, we would also be ready to lift the brackets after, about including a strong participation of IPLCs, community women and youth. I would hope that's not controversial by anyone. For paragraph 17, we fully agree it doesn't actually make a difference on the timing, because in our view, all these documents would be adopted at the COP. So without delay and directly after COP would be the same. But I think the proposal to redraft on that particular issue should not be a problem. And then we would also be able to lift the brackets for that paragraph. The second part of the paragraph is also bracketed. We don't have a problem with the text, but there's quite a bit of repetition with what follows below. So it's not sure it's needed, but we have no problem and we could lift the bracket. And for paragraph 15 also there are brackets which are just about a factual situation, how the strategy has been prepared, so those brackets could be deleted as well. Thank you. And we also would like to come back on the table, but I understand that's in the next round.
Okay, I have no comments on para 13, and I think we keep it as it is then with the brackets inside. On 14, We have some suggestions. Please, Secretary, could you read out 14 as now amended?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So in paragraph 14, we have had the addition of text in the first sentence. After experts in communication, we have and behavioral change, which was proposed by the EU, but both Argentina and South Africa have requested that this is in brackets. We also have a suggestion by the EU that the phrase, including a strong participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, which is currently in brackets, that those brackets be removed. Those are the two changes we currently have in this paragraph. Thank you.
So thank you. I would like to see if any views on those proposals in para 14. I think the first one is in brackets. I mean, that we can agree on, but maybe the other proposal to lift that bracket. And I give the floor to Peru. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Peru supports the position of Egypt and Morocco in the sense that we should not only review the whole documents of sections of documents, but the paragraphs, because the only one thing that we are doing now is to postpone further discussions. We appreciate very much your efforts to move forward towards the end of the discussion, but as mentioned, we agree with the position of the both previous distinguished speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. I now heard many views on this. I would then suggest in section 3 go para by para, but I will not go back to section 1 and section 2. I hope this is acceptable compromise. So from section 3, I will go para by para. So let's start with para 13. And here is only one square bracket. And could that be lifted? UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was actually going to comment on paragraph 14, as I hadn't spotted the square brackets in paragraph 13, so I'll try to come back to that one. I think very simply on paragraph 14, we agree with others that it's great if we can remove some square brackets where we can do. And from the UK's perspective, we'd be happy to remove the square brackets around the involvement of Indigenous peoples, women and youth. And we would also support the EU in including experts in behaviour change as part of the consultations. So we would be happy to see that as a clean paragraph, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So for Russian Federation followed by South Africa. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under paragraph 13, we would like to retain the square brackets there. Thank you.
Thank you. And South Africa?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We also wish to retain the square brackets, or perhaps we can instead, what we can do, we can just qualify this and include 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature, and then maybe the proponent can therefore accept the deletion of the words that are in the bracket. It's just a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Russian Federation would like to delete the brackets on paragraph 13. But in paragraph 13, there are brackets only around Mother Earth right at the end. I think the representative of the Russian Federation gave the wrong paragraph number. I think she might have been talking about paragraph 14 and not 13. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Morocco. Well, sorry if I am a bit unclear, but on para 13 I heard views that from some parties that want to keep a bracket around Mother Earth. So with 13 is then?
There's a proposal from South Africa to...
And we did have a proposal from South Africa. And can Secretary please read out as a compromise proposal for the square bracket in para 13, Secretariat?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the proposal was from South Africa to add the phrase, the 2050 vision of, in front of living in harmony in nature. So paragraph 13C would say to promote awareness, etc., and transformative change towards the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. And on that basis, the words Mother Earth would be removed, but we would add this phrase, the 2050 vision, as a compromise. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat, and thank you, South Africa, for your proposal for compromise text. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam. For Bolivia, it's very important to retain the wording of Mother Earth. This is a different understanding of nature, is the holistic understanding of indigenous peoples in several regions and countries of the world. So we want to retain the wording Mother Earth in this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I would like to propose that we have both text in square brackets, two alternatives. I hope that is agreeable. Yeah. Thank you so much. So para 13, so agreed, is approved. And then we do have para 14, and we did have one square bracket in the beginning, and also I would like to lift the square brackets.
Around including, yeah.
Around including.
Yeah.
Where's that?
Yes, so they remove the square brackets here.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Including a strong participation indigenous. Yeah. Sorry, Secretary, please read out. I cannot read my own notes, sorry for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So in paragraph 14, just to remind, is that there has been the addition after experts in communication, the phrase "and behavioral change," proposed by the European Union, supported by the United Kingdom. However, Argentina and South Africa have indicated that should remain in brackets. The phrase "including a strong participation of indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth," the brackets are removed from there, and those are the last changes in this paragraph. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I hope that it could be acceptable. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, we would strongly support the deletion of the brackets around including a strong participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. So I see no objections, so the para amended, as just read out by the Secretary, is approved. Let's move on to para 15. And we did have a suggestion to lift that bracket. I think it was from the EU. And any objections? Russian Federation? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to delete this section. If there are objections to leave it, then we can keep it in brackets. Thank you.
Okay, we keep a bracket. And then any objection to that? No? I see none. Para 15 with its brackets is approved. Let's move on to para 16. There is no brackets. So there is no bracket in para 16, so can I adopt it? I see no objection, so agreed. And para 17, we had...
Do you want me to go through them again?
Yes, we have. Please read it out. It was about immediately. Could you please repeat it again, the proposal, so it's clear to everybody? Secretariat.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So paragraph 17 has brackets, and in fact, there are two options presented. There's the first option in brackets that begins, parties should start implementing the elements of the global biodiversity framework, etc., all the way to the end of national reports. There's a second option, which says parties are invited to create national versions of the strategy. In this section, we got a proposal from, I believe it was Togo, that said that as soon as it is adopted by the Conference of the Parties. So, before you, paragraph 17, there are two options for the text, and both are in brackets. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And we would like to support the second version of the paragraph. I think it is more simple, streamlined, and it basically covers all what we need. So we would suggest to delete the first option, the longer one, and to keep the second one. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I hope that para 17, as just read out, amended is acceptable. Jordan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the second part, and strategies that could be adopted, we have reservations on this because there are differences of view on the strategies to be adopted at the national level, and this relates to the finance mechanisms that were adopted, that have been adopted so far, and the implementation mechanisms. So we think we should invite the parties and not call on parties to, etc. Thank you.
I think we cannot solve those brackets here because there are different views, and but there are an option that parties are invited. So I think we keep both options in square brackets. It's the best way forward right now. So I see no more requests to the floor, so the para 17 is approved. And let's move on then to para 18 and its table. I think there were some, yes, Canada, you would like to come back on the table? Canada, please, followed by the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like to make an insertion in the first row. So it would read, convene SIPA IAC and relevant actor to update the present strategy for consideration by SBI-3 and create further guidance for national, subnational, and local level. So the insertion would be for consideration by SBI-3. And in respect to this suggestion, we're wondering if we need to update the strategy at every SBI. That's a question for the group. Our second comment is on the column with respect to national level. So we understand that there's discussion under SBI agenda item 9 on what core elements should be included in the NBSAP. And our preference would be to go with a proposal that would read, invite parties as appropriate to integrate relevant actions from the communication strategy in their planning and reporting mechanism. I believe this is what was the approach that was taken for the gender plan of action in the table in the gender plan of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Could you please repeat in dictation speed, please?
So on the first first column, the proposal would be to add for consideration by SBI-4 after the present strategy. And on the second column, it would read, invite parties as appropriate to integrate relevant actions from the communication strategy in their planning and reporting mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I give the floor to Togo. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a general comment on the table because we are talking about communication right now. I recall that under CRP on cooperation, we insisted on the importance of regional organizations that also have a role in contributing efficiently to the implementation of the framework. Now, having said that, I was wondering whether or not it would also be relevant, perhaps, to try to find a role for these institutions who could make an important contribution. Now, their role with regards to their competencies and skills and the relations they have with states and other pertinent institutions means that they could make a contribution to improving communications. So this is just a question, something I was wondering about. Perhaps in this table we could include that issue because we are talking about national levels here. Now, also with regards to my first comment under paragraph 17, the Secretariat has always, well, within the convention, the Secretariat is always using terms with regards to states. Now, that's why I believe that the term immediately wasn't the appropriate term to be used here, that we should have used more diplomatic and encouraging language. In relation to that, I think that the first line of the table, we still see the word immediately. So I would like to either put that into square brackets, perhaps. We think that maybe we could just decide upon that at the COP15. Now, my other comment is the last line. Instead of the second column talking about the final report, the final activities report, and the changes in the perception of biodiversity, we should like to suggest that this should be we should talk about conservation. Now, this is the central element of the convention. We're not only talking about biodiversity. When we look at our goals, it is really done in the spirit of conservation. That's what we will be evaluating. So we should like to talk about the conservation of biodiversity. Perception on biodiversity, which should be the same in the following column. Because here we were talking about the final report and the changes in perception on biodiversity conservation. I hope I have been clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Togo. Okay, thank you so much. Togo, I understood your suggestion to delete, we can delete immediately in the first column, start the phrase with following the 15th meeting, and we can also add biodiversity conservation as suggested, but I was wondering that your proposal on regional, could you please come back with a specific text proposal? Maybe you can think about it while I ask the EU and the Bureau to comment, because I need to have some text here so we can add. I give the floor first, or do you have a text proposal already now?
Non, nous allons les...
We will draft some text rapidly and submit it to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The EU, and followed by Peru. The EU, you have the floor.
Could we give the floor to EU, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm aware that we're in a very far corner, so it takes sometimes a little bit time for the microphone to turn red. But I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and the member states, 27. There are a couple of issues in the table. First of all, on the suggestion to delete immediately, it is still urgent. Whether would be nice if we could put it as soon as possible. Then there's another issue. Well, secondly, we liked the proposal made by Canada, so we would support that. Thirdly, on adding the word conservation, I'm actually not entirely clear where that would end up, but also I'm a bit would be cautious in just referring to one part of all the work that we're doing. All the three objectives are important. The entire global biodiversity framework is important. So we would rather refrain from selective mentioning and leave it easy and just keep it general. Thirdly, in the third column, I think there's a bit of confusion with what would be reported and included through the national reports and what could be communicated outside reporting. And for the EU and its 27 member states, it's really important that we don't create additional reporting burdens outside the national reports, whereas we would encourage, of course, updating, communicating any relevant communication activities in between, so that indeed the various SBIs and COPs have the relevant information. That said, that for the third column, that would imply that for the line, do you want me to go in detail, or could we trust the Secretariat simply to make the corrections systematically? Because basically, only for the lines where we have an SBI following a national report, that's where we would like to see a reference to the national reports. And in all the other lines, we would use the wording rather to say, I think it's communicate through the CHM, national bioland, CHM sites, or other mechanisms, adjust as needed. So for instance, that's the line after for the by SBI-3, that would read, communicate on activities during the biennium through the CHM, national bioland, CHM sites, or other mechanisms adjusted as needed. Whereas for the line on SBI-5, which would be after the national reports, I think then we have indeed the wording on reporting. So indeed, that's where it's already said through the national reports, but there we would still add and share relevant information through the CHM, national bioland, CHM sites. Then further in the table, and I go now back to the second column.
Sorry, the EU, I think we need, could you take it takes some time to capture all your suggestions. So could you please repeat the one you just said? once again and take it slowly. Thank you.
So in the line by SBI-4, the third column, we would say communicate on activities during the biennium through the CHM, comma, national bioland CHM sites, comma, and then we delete through national reports, or other mechanisms adjusted as needed. And then, so the paragraph that's there, report on activities during, that would be deleted. Then the line for SBI-5, that's where we would write paragraph 5, that's apparently it's text as it, but that would refer to the national reports, if I'm correct. And then the same for the line for SBI-6. That would be without national reports, so that's about share relevant information or communicate on the activities, like for SBI, the line for SBI-4. And again for SBI-7, it would be a final report, and that's already final report on activities. We would delete as appropriate, because we expect well, that would be covered by the national report, and then it's not, and we will have hopefully a template for that, so it's no need for having as appropriate through the 8th national report, etc. And without any brackets further.
Thank you, the EU. I give the floor to Peru, followed by Brazil. Peru, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the previous proposal of the distinguished delegation of Canada, we would like to put this proposal in brackets for further analysis and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the first line of the table, on the column under Executive Secretary, the first item on convene the informal advisory committee, we would like to retain the brackets around relevant actors, as it remains unclear to us which actors would be selected and what would be the grounds to identify those actors. And regarding the second line of this item, to update, we feel that it would be up to SBI to discuss possible elements for consideration on the revised version of the strategy. So we would prefer to rephrase this item as convene the informal advisory committee to identify possible elements to inform the present strategy and create further guidance for the national, subnational, and local levels. And then we could go along with the proposal from Canada to add for consideration of SBI. And regarding the other column under actions at the national level, we would like to support the proposal made from Canada. We understand that we should not be overly prescriptive and not list all possible mechanisms. And we think that the proposal from Canada on invites is appropriate to include elements in the planning and reporting mechanisms, allows for flexibility for parties to identify which would be the most suitable mechanism to include communication components. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll be able to be quick because I support a lot of the points that Brazil has just made. Like Brazil, we wondered why we were going to update the present strategy almost as soon as it has been adopted. And I think Brazil's suggestion to that actually what we're asking here is for a bit of work before an update is taken place. So I think the suggestion included there by Brazil is a good one, and we would support that. And we would also support the consideration by SBI-3 inserted by Canada, because I think that provides clarity on when we're looking for this update to take place, as a really helpful one. And we'd also support the insertion by Canada in the national level, where we're inviting parties as appropriate to integrate the relevant actions, etc. We do think that there needs to be flexibility for parties and others in how we utilize the strategy. And there is concern on our side that if we're overly prescriptive, we will just add reporting burdens onto parties. So we think there needs to be a flexible approach for how we use the strategy, and we can use it as guidance. And so we think that Canada's suggestion here accurately covers that. I had one final comment, and that is in the second column with directions to the Executive Secretary. And it comes up in several places, but we're in the first one where we're talking about by SBI-3, it says in here that we're going to collaborate with CEPA and the advisory committee to review and report on activities and further update the strategy. But I think we also need to include in here that we want to review the impact of those activities. There's no point in us updating a website or holding workshops if nobody comes to them and nobody reads them. So I think it's important that we include a review of what impact those activities are having. We don't think that that should be a huge burden, but it should be something quite simple that the advisory groups should be able to take account of. So our suggestion is to include in the column under Executive Secretary that it's to review and report on activities, and to add "and their impact." And then it would carry on with "and further update the strategy." We'd like that to be inserted in each time, so before it talks about each SBI, to have those words just inserted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. I would like to go back to Togo. Have you your text proposal on regional, is it ready to be presented? Togo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la...
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going over the document now because I believe that this should probably be part of an institutional framework, and especially with regards to the cooperation that we should have at the regional level. I suppose that this doesn't necessarily need to be part of this table that we are looking at now. It could be in another section, so we will give you a more concrete proposal a bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Togo. Thank you so much. I would like to go back to the EU and ask, because I think your proposal was more prescriptive, but you've heard the comments from Canada, Brazil, and UK who wanted to have it in more general. So could you maybe withdraw your... Yes, thank you so much. So with these changes, can I adopt the table? I see no opposition is so agreed. I will then continue and start with section 4 on goals, para 19. Can para 19 be agreed? I see no objection is so agreed. Oh, the EU, sorry. The EU, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam Chair, apologies. Unless I misunderstand, but I think there's paragraph 18. I'm not sure whether we already lifted the brackets in that one, which would be perfectly fine for us. And for paragraph 19, we would also be happy to lift the brackets for the first part, but
sorry, the EU. The 18 is a table. So I think
okay, apologies.
Okay, thank you. So you have a comment on para 19? Please go ahead. Yes, the EU, you have the floor.
Apologies. So we're fine with lifting the brackets?
Yes,
in
so
19.
In 19, yes, I understand that. So can we agree on lift the brackets in para 19? I see Brazil, you ask for the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to seek some clarification regarding the table. I understood that in all lines, the column under national level would be, the proposal from Canada would apply. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I understand I'm not totally clear always, but that is the intention, yes, thank you. I have a proposal from the EU to lift the brackets in para 19. And is there no objection? I suggest we lift the bracket in para 19. So para 19 without brackets is approved. Thank you so much. So para 20, I will try to see if we can lift the brackets in para 20. Is there any opposition? Russian Federation followed by Canada and the EU. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In paragraph 20A, we would like to suggest deleting where it talks about biocentric, that whole paragraph, that whole section of the paragraph which is in square brackets, we suggest, no, I'm sorry, where it says cosmo-biocentric, that part to be deleted.
Yes, thank you, Russian Federation. So I understand we keep that text in brackets.
They want to delete cosmo-biocentric.
Yeah. And Canada, followed by EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we're not mistaken, I think that this paragraph relates to section K of the GBF, and we're wondering if it would be preferable to just keep it in brackets so that it's aligned with the text when we adopt it. Thank you.
Okay, then we keep a bracket for the whole para 20 of the reason just raised. South Africa, are you okay with that as well, or do you have another comment? South
Actually,
Africa.
I wanted to support Canada. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so para 20 with its brackets is kept. I hope we can agree para 20 with the brackets. I see in opposition is so agreed. Let's move on to para 21. And here, I guess we have the same, maybe the concern from the Russian Federation, but it's in brackets. I see you nodding. Can we agree with para 21 and keep the brackets? The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you. We certainly support keeping the brackets around cosmo-biocentric word, because it's not a word that we really know very well, and it's not very well defined. I think for us, what's important here is really the increasing understanding, awareness, and appreciation of the multiple values and the different visions and approaches. We fully are aware that this is important, but we're not entirely sure it should be addressed here at the very start. It might be, and we already have later on in the text, values and approaches used by indigenous peoples and local communities. So it might be preferable to have to move different visions and approaches, actually just to delete it, because it's not needed, and on the rest, including the values and approaches used by indigenous peoples and local communities, covers it all. So that would also simplify the text and would read, yeah, and has the right balance in the text. Thank you.
So just so I'm sure I understand you want to keep cosmo-biocentric in brackets, I understand that, but you also would like to delete in the first line different visions and approaches, is that correct? Yeah, so correct.
It's in brackets here anyway, so we just put it back in brackets.
Yeah. Okay, we could keep different visions and approaches in bracket because it's bracketed, as you see in para 20a. So that might be a solution, to keep also the text, different visions and approaches in brackets, so it's aligned. Bolivia, you had the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam. Yeah, that was our proposal. If the European Union doesn't agree with the and doesn't understand at all this goal, we just want to keep in brackets, but retain the text as it is. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Bolivia. But we keep the text is there, but it's in brackets. So I hope with that para 21 with the brackets inside is acceptable. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For 21H, which is in square brackets, we would like to delete the second part where it talks about as well as acknowledge.
On that, I'm only on 21 now. 22H they're talking about. So thank you. So I would like to see if we can have an agreement on para 21. We have two square brackets. And I see no objection. Is so agreed? Let's move on to para 22. Okay, we can try to take 22 and it's under subpara as a whole. And I think you had a comment, Russian Federation, on this part. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 22C, we have the same comment we had earlier to retain the square brackets around cosmo-biocentric. Now, with regards to 22H, we would like to delete the second part of that paragraph, which says, as well as knowledge on how to act towards transformational change. Thank you.
So you want to delete the text that is now in brackets, that's correct? Yeah, thank you. Well, it's already in brackets. Colombia, followed by Canada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colombia wants to add in the, before the last line of the paragraph 22, after peoples and local communities, comma, as well as other knowledge systems, comma. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. I give the floor to Canada, followed by EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our comment is on 22C. We would like to read it as promote respect for approaches of indigenous people and local communities to live in harmony with nature. So it's a slight change. It would read promote respect for. Thank you.
And that will be an alternative text for the text that is Canada, is that correct?
Thank you. Yeah, we would replace the promotion of by promote respect for. Thank you.
Thank you. The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps first the body of the paragraph 22. We're not entirely sure whether there's really a common, clear understanding of what is meant by perceived behavior control. So we would suggest deleting that one. And if that's deleted, then we could also lift the brackets. Then on section, on the indents, perhaps first on C, we would propose deleting the word cosmobiocentric, but at least keep it in brackets otherwise. We could delete the brackets in D about multiple. And we could delete the brackets in H. And also in J.
Sorry, I think it's, are you talking about little I?
Oh, it's sorry, I, apparently. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm getting a bit tired and my eyes are getting a little bit less precise.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think we all are worked very hard, so I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. Thank you.
And we have doubts on B, so we propose deleting that one just to, yeah. So all of B, I think we, of course, in the mission, it might be an alternative to refer to the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. All the other elements are confusing the message here, so we would, if not deleting it entirely, then perhaps it would be better to have a reference to the vision, 2050 vision, living in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Thank you. The EU, Brazil, followed by Argentina. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the chapeau of paragraph 22, we'd like to retain the brackets for the time being for the same reasons as previously expressed by Argentina and South Africa on the concept of behavior change that we think it still requires further clarification. And regarding the little I, the last subpara, we would suggest adding a reference to SDG 4.7 and SDG 12.8, which precisely address sustainable lifestyles and education. So we would suggest replacing the end of the little I, and little y would read as promotion of reconnection with nature through formal and informal education, comma, in line with SDG 4.7 and SDG 12.8 to promote sustainable lifestyles and ensure that people everywhere have the relevant information and awareness for sustainable development and lifestyles in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And in line with Brazil and South Africa, we would like to keep the brackets in paragraph 22. If I can further elaborate a little bit, we see it rather difficult to dictate how behavior should change at the global level to some very local realities. So we do not really see a role for the Secretariat here, and that is the main reason why we are requesting to remove these references throughout the strategy for communication. Behavioral change may be important, but it's something that will have to be decided at the national level, but in many cases I would even say at the local level, and those strategies should take place there. Additionally, we would not be in a position at this stage to remove the brackets in subparagraph H around as well as knowledge on how to act towards transformational change. And in subparagraph A, we would not be able to remove the brackets either, given that it actually addresses behavioral change again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Argentina. I see no brackets in little a. Maybe you can clarify. Microphone to Argentina.
Thank you, Chair. So my reading is that the brackets start at the beginning of H and they are closed at the end in little a, if I'm wrong. So we would be ready to leave the brackets in H except from the brackets within. So we would accept an H that reads revision of education curricula to include biodiversity values and the importance of reconnection with nature. That would be okay for us. But then on little a, we would keep the brackets around the whole paragraph. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Argentina, for the clarification. Morocco, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go back to the first paragraph, the first part of paragraph 22. We would like, if the room can agree, to simplify this because there's so many drafting points in this paragraph, and we want to get rid of the brackets. So we propose to keep the first sentence, this goal continues to support the work up until important distinctions, and then go to the last sentence, which says the achievement of this objective will require the following activities, some of the following activities to support its realization. And this is for reasons of simplification and practicality. I think what we're proposing to delete is verbiage, really. There's nothing much that's concrete and practical in the parts that we are proposing to delete. We just want to get right to the activities that need to be carried out. Thank you, Madam.
Yes, I think it was a very good suggestion by Morocco. So maybe if we have agreement to do that deletion and simplify the text in para 22, if I have no objections. Democratic Republic of Congo, do you want to come on this or another point? Democratic Republic of Congo?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. We'd like to intervene on paragraphs B and D. For B, we propose to delete the last part that's in brackets, so living well in harmony with Mother Earth, and to leave in the first portion, living in harmony with nature. In D, delta, we propose to delete what's in the brackets, multiple, and just have values of biodiversity. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay, I would like to first take the suggestion by Morocco to simplify the text in para 22, and I will ask the Secretary to read it out, how para 22 then will look like. Please, Secretariat.
Great, thank you, Madam Chairperson. So the proposal from Morocco is to take the section that's currently in brackets and delete it, and to make the paragraph considerably shorter. And so paragraph 22 would simply say, this goal continues to support the work conducted under IHC Target 1 during the previous decade, but has important distinctions. The achievement of this objective or this goal will require the following activities to support its realization. And that would be the end of that paragraph, and then we would go into the subparagraphs. So, there.
Is everyone okay with this proposal? I think is a good simplification. Please lower your hand if you don't. Okay, Bolivia, you're not okay with this? Bolivia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam. Well, indeed, paragraph 22 for Bolivia, it is very important to keep the wording regarding the knowledge, values, and approaches of indigenous peoples and local communities. But I also wanted to react to the proposal of the Democratic Republic of Congo to try to, well, to delete the reference to living well in harmony with Mother Earth. Well, just to say that it is very well defined and it has been approved in the context of the conceptual framework of the IBES. Therefore, we want to support the inclusion of this specific reference to living well in harmony with Mother Earth in the context of the discussion of the different knowledge systems as it is now in the conceptual framework of IBES. So I want support just to keep in brackets and not to delete these very important references. Thank you.
Thank you, Bolivia. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I think then we need to keep a text as it is in para 22, but we...
22B.
Or?
That was for 22B.
Sorry, and as I understand the comment just made by Bolivia, Bolivia couldn't accept the simplification proposed by Morocco. Is that correct? Just to be sure, Bolivia, you have the floor.
I accept the simplification, but I don't understand at all if the reference to the knowledge, values, and approaches of indigenous peoples is included or not in this simplification. For Bolivia, it is very important to retain this text in this paragraph.
Thank you, Bolivia. And I ask Morocco if you have another suggestion, maybe. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the concern of my Bolivian colleague is clearly in the title, the heading, the values and approaches used by the indigenous peoples. That is goal A in and of itself. So I don't believe we need to be redundant within the body of the paragraph 22. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Morocco, for that explanation. Bolivia, with that explanation, could you accept the simplification of para 22? Since the text, as you refer to, is in goal A. Bolivia, you have the floor.
At this stage, Madam, as Bolivia, we prefer to be redundant. There is no problem for us to be redundant in this case.
Okay, we put then the text in the brackets and move on. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To try to come up with a solution, perhaps we could keep the phrase that was highlighted by Bolivia under the chapeau of paragraph 2, that starts with the deliberate inclusion of the associated knowledge, because I think that the concerns of Brazil and others was more related to the initial part, a more conceptual idea on behavioral control and so on. And to keep it simple, we would delete the second sentence, starting with "it is relevant that its goal and until act for biodiversity," and then we would keep the other sentence that is kin to Bolivia on the idea of associated knowledge, values, and approaches of indigenous people. Then we would still streamline the text, but then we could be able to lift the brackets, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I hope that this can be okay for Bolivia. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Yes, it is okay. I accept the Brazilian proposal.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your cooperation. So, okay, I will ask the Secretariat to read it out so it's clear to everybody. Secretariat, please read out para 22.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So with the proposal before us, we'll be removing one sentence, the sentence relating to understanding behavioral change, etc. So paragraph 22 would say, this goal continues to support the work conducted under Aichi Target 1 during the previous decade, but has important distinctions. Then we would delete the next sentence, and so then the next phrase would be, the deliberate inclusion of the associated knowledge, values, and approaches of indigenous peoples and local communities, as well as other knowledge systems, which was a text introduced by Colombia, also expands the range of discussions and potential actions. This goal requires some of the following activities to support its realization. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. And I assume we have agreement on these texts. I see no objection. So para 22 as amended is agreed. I think we have captured all the other suggestions for little a until little I, so I hope we can agree to those part of this para 22A until I. I see no objection, is so agreed. Let's move on, and I take goal B and para 23, 24. Yeah, 23 and 24 is no brackets. 25. So can we lift?
25 is completely in brackets.
So 25 is completely in brackets, but 23 and 24 we have no brackets. And the chapeau text is no bracket. Can we agree on the chapeau text on B and 23 and 24 since there are no brackets? If I start with that. The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you. I beg for your indulgence. Paragraph 25 is the one with goal B? Because
I will come back to 25. I'm now only asking about the chapeau text of goal B, and 23 and 24, since there are no brackets, if that could be agreed.
Okay.
And I see you nodding. So I then suggest that the chapeau text in goal B and 23 and 24 is agreed. I see no objections, so agreed. Let's move on then to para 25. And here we do have a bracket, and I think that you want to comment on para 25, is that correct? No? I give the floor to Switzerland, followed by Togo. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would like to make an insertion at the end of the first line, reading subject to available resources. The reason is we are not sure if there is sufficient funds available in the core budget for this. We would also like to bracket national actors in this first line, because we are not sure who that would be. And we are also not sure about the implications this would have on providing resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. And I give the floor to Togo, followed by UK. Togo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Togo would like to comment about the end of the lead paragraph, the chapeau. We think we should keep in mind the following principles when we analyze the content. Maybe it's a translation issue, but are these really principles? We would like to keep the following elements in mind instead of principles, because in reality, we're not really talking about principles in this context, unless there was a translation issue with the French text.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you, Togo. So if I understand it correctly, Togo, you want to have elements instead of principles, is that correct? Togo, you have the floor. Togo, you have the floor.
Qui n'est pas allumé là. OK.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Madam.
I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. So you want to replace principles with elements, that's correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I give the floor to UK.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in respect of paragraph 25 and the sub-paragraphs beneath this, I wonder whether there's some repetition here with some of the discussions that are taking place under the contact group looking at review mechanisms. Within those discussions, they are talking about national plans, how countries would implement them, monitoring and review, indicators, etc. And I would hate to see us repeat the very good work that is already taking place within those sections. So my suggestion, Madam Chair, is that we perhaps keep all of paragraph 25 within square brackets until we've seen the outcome of the other group's work. And perhaps we could invite the Secretariat to do a read across to make sure we're not duplicating efforts that had already been picked up there. And so I would think we should save ourselves a little bit of time here right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. We completely agree. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would go a bit further than the UK and just suggest that those sub-paragraphs be deleted, not because they're not important, but I think that in the chapeau, we are asking the Secretariat to provide transparent and regular updates of progress in accordance with the headline indicators. And we struggle to see a bit the relationship between the sub-paras and what is being asked in the chapeau. Of course, we know there are ongoing discussions on the mechanisms under SBI-9, but we honestly do not understand the added value of having all those references here under the sub-para. So perhaps if we could go along with the proposal from Switzerland, we could delete all sub-paras and in the chapeau of 25 only have reference to the Secretariat and eliminating national actors and national platforms. Then we make sure those will be tied to activities from the Secretariat to monitor progress on the implementation of the strategy. And I think this would streamline and make it easier to read and to communicate to all those who read this strategy. Because otherwise we're adding a lot of elements that might not have a direct relationship to what is being asked at the chapeau. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Basil. I also think it's a good idea to try to simplify this text. So I would propose we do like your suggestion, and I will ask Secretariat to read out 25, and so how it will look like. Please, Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So consistent with the proposal just made from Brazil, paragraph 25 would read as follows. The Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity need to provide transparent and regular updates of progress according to the headline and other indicators in the monitoring framework, both through the central portal linked to the clearinghouse mechanism and the communication platforms of the Convention. We could even say subject to available resources, and then we delete everything else. So again, that first sentence, the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity need to provide... yes, exactly, need to provide transparent, regular updates, etc. We remove national actors, we remove national platforms, and we say subject to available resources. All the sub-paragraphs are deleted. Thank you very much.
I hope you can agree to this simplification. I see no opposition, so agreed. Let's move on to goal C and para 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. I have no brackets in the chapeau goal C and 26. So I assume that text is agreeable. I see no opposition, so agreed. Let's move to para 27. Can you agree to lift the brackets in para 27? Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this paragraph, we would like to delete the second part, which is in the second square brackets. That is on the International Day of Mother Earth and until the end of the paragraph. Thank you.
Okay, we don't, I mean, it is in square brackets already, and okay, so I will keep all the square brackets. Togo followed by the EU.
We just wanted to support the proposal of Russia on deleting this mention of the International Day of Mother Earth, and just to keep the first part of that paragraph. Thank you.
Okay, then I suggest that we keep para 27 with all brackets and do not change it. Is that agreeable? Yeah?
Oui, normalement après la
Normally, if we delete that part, we can remove the other brackets if everyone else agrees.
No, yes, thank you very much, Torge, for your suggestion. But I think that there seems to be, there are also some parts I guess would like to need to keep that text. So I understand your proposal, but I would suggest for now that we keep the text, all brackets in the text, and go on. Thank you so much. So 27, we have all brackets. No. Okay, so 27 is agreed with the brackets kept. In 28, there's no brackets. I assume we can agree at 28. See no objection, is so agreed. In 29, we do have brackets. Anyone who wants to lift the brackets? If not, I would suggest we keep a bracket. Anyone who wants to lift the brackets? No? Bolivia, you have the floor.
Bolivia suggests to leave these brackets because, well, so far we are almost 10 years working in the General Assembly with the initiative of interactive dialogue of living in harmony with nature, which is very closely related to the 2050 vision of the CBD of living in harmony with nature. Therefore, seems to be a clear connection and articulation between the purpose of the CBD with the interactive dialogue of the General Assembly, and this can really provide more visibility to the CBD in the overall context of the discussions of the United Nations. So we suggest to leave this bracket. Thank you.
Okay, we have a suggestion to lift the brackets in 29. Could parties agree to lift the brackets in 29? The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, with the wording as it stands, we cannot accept lifting the brackets. And it's important, we understand that there are actually many relevant initiatives for which we may wish to have joint actions. But then singling out one is in our view not a good approach. So I'm wondering whether it would work simply to have a more general wording, so to develop annual joint communication activities with relevant UN and other initiatives. But actually, this may already be covered by other paragraphs. So for that reason, we prefer full deletion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I will suggest we keep a text 29 and keep the brackets. I hope that's acceptable. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you're right. We keep the brackets as it is.
Thank you so much. So 29, we keep the brackets. It's so agreed. Para 30. Anyone who wants to lift the brackets in para 30? Russian Federation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We suggest removing the brackets from para 30 and to keep the text that they contain. We are for that text. Thank you.
Thank you, Russian Federation. We have a suggestion to remove the brackets from para 30. Is that agreeable? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding paragraph 30, we would have a minor amendment in the end of the first sentence, after Act for Biodiversity and the Planet, we would suggest adding building on synergies with SDG 4.7 and SDG 12.8. And the rationale for this is that many countries already implement educational programs on sustainable development, and they could benefit new initiatives on biodiversity education and awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. And I understand that you can also accept that we do lift the brackets with this insertion, right? Thank you. South Africa, you had the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. South Africa also support lifting of the brackets together with the insertion from Brazil. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. If you are in agreement with the suggestion to lift the brackets and add an addition by Brazil, you don't need to speak. Okay, thank you so much. So then para 30, we lift the brackets and with the addition of Brazil is so approved. Let's move on to para 31. There is no brackets. I assume it can be acceptable to parties. Is so agreed? Let's move on to goal D. And I start with the goal D text and para 32A until C. So, yes, there are some brackets. Argentina, you had the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And, well, in subparagraph 32B, we see at the end some wording that, in our view, it is going further than we have already decided under the GBF and the negotiations. So we would suggest to bracket the last sentence, that it basically decides what's the message that we will decide in the negotiation of the GBF. So we think that that should be deleted, actually, and then whatever the result principally in target 8 of the GBF, it could be taken from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. Is there an agreement to delete the last sentence in para 32B, as suggested by Argentina, the EU and its member states? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps we can replace it with a broader reference to the work on the UNFCCC and climate change. But the full deletion of the reference to climate change would not be a good idea for us. It's really important to have it. At the same time, I see here there's also brackets around just a little bit above Mother Earth-centered actions, collective action, including those by indigenous and local communities. That those brackets we would like to keep, or actually, if that text would be deleted, because here it's not really the best place, and yeah, so that one we would prefer to delete. Thank you.
I understood the proposal by Argentina to just delete the last sentence, but maybe I can ask Argentina to clarify that. Is that correct? Yes? Yeah, Argentina, you had the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and you are correct. My suggestion was not to delete the references but to the synergies between the implementation of the GBS and the commitments under UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement. Only the last sentence, which refers to what the messages should be, that says such messages should underline the interdependence of the problem and the solution, and how nature should contribute to mitigation and adaptation, etc., which we think are going to be addressed in Target 8. So let's not negotiate Target 8 here, let's negotiate Target 8 in the GBF, and then let's the expert in communication take information from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. The EU, I hope this was with that explanation, you can accept the deletion of the last sentence? The EU?
Thank you. Pending the negotiations on target 8, we will prefer to keep it in brackets because it is, in our view, really a very important message in the communication. Thank you.
Thank you, the EU. Then I suggest we put that last sentence in brackets. Togo, you had the floor.
Merci.
Thank you. It's extremely important, in my view, for this part to be retained, because like the EU just said, it is still a very important element in the message that we're trying to send, because it shows the importance of shedding light on poverty and eliminating poverty and its impacts. So when we look at sustainability, means that this sentence seems to be isolated, but this is something that establishes the link between both of these programs, and it's important. We're not trying to negotiate a new text. It is merely a reminder to show that there is a link between both of these programs, and that these initiatives could help to eradicate poverty. That's very important, we believe. Thank you.
Okay, so I will keep 32A, B, and C as it is, but I will put that last sentence in 32B, such messages, etc., in brackets, since there are different views on that. If you are okay with that, please take down your hand so I can, if it's acceptable. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under 32A, we think that the brackets should be removed. We believe that the links with the Sustainable Development Goals are an integral part of the concept of the post-2020 program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Russian Federation. The suggestion by Russian Federation to remove the brackets for 32A, is it that agreeable? I see no opposition, so 32A, we can remove the brackets in that one. Thank you so much. And then we do have B, where it will stand as it is, but we add one more bracket in the end. And that is agreeable, I hope. I see no opposition. And C, we did have no brackets. I hope that is agreeable. So agreed. Let's move on to para 33. There is no brackets. I hope that is agreeable. Yes, it's agreed. 34. Anyone who wants to lift this bracket? Yes, South Africa?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I wanted to request that the One Health agenda be replaced to say One Health approach. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, South Africa, for that is a right. Yeah, it's a right, but will be corrected. But I understand that anyone who wants to lift this bracket? No, the EU, you have the floor.
Yes, we're happy to lift the brackets.
Okay, so if is it okay to lift the brackets and adjust the wording so you talk about One Health approach instead? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding this second sentence of paragraph 34, we would suggest to have a language more consistent with decision 14 2020/4 on biodiversity and health adopted in the last COP. So we'd prefer to rephrase this paragraph. Well, we would keep the first sentence. Human health and biodiversity also represent a key area in which the contribution of implementation of the framework needs to be highlighted. And then we would suggest merging the second sentence to the first sentence as follows. Taking into account health biodiversity linkages, including the contributions of the One Health approach amongst other holistic approaches. We feel that the linkages between biodiversity and health are broader than only pandemic prevention, and we would be missing other important elements if we highlight only the idea of pandemic prevention. So we would prefer to have a more general reference to interlinkages between biodiversity and health. And recognizing also other holistic approaches, which has been the language agreed under decision 14/4. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil, and I would like to ask the Secretary to read it out so it's clear. Thank you, Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the language suggested by Brazil would replace the last sentence. It would now say, taking into account health biodiversity linkages, including the contribution of the One Health approach amongst other holistic approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Can the text, para 34, and the text with the text amendments proposed by Brazil be acceptable? I see no, the EU, yes, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that the word among should be replaced by and. It should be just a tiny editorial correction of the new wording for the paragraph we just discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, the EU. Brazil, are you okay with that? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, yeah, I use the word among because it's the agreed language under decision 14/4. But for the sake of moving forward, we could go along with and. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your cooperation. So I understand that 34 as amended is agreeable. Yes, I see no opposition, so agreed. Let's move on to para 35. Anyone who wants to lift the brackets, otherwise you keep it. Mexico, you have the floor.
Yes, we believe it is very important to make mention of rights that was just discussed a few blocks from here, and that we need to recognize it in all different conventions. So yes, we would like to lift the brackets.
Thank you, Mexico. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would prefer that this text remain in brackets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Then we keep a text in brackets. So para 35 with the brackets, I hope it's agreeable. See no opposition, so agreed. And para 36, anyone who wants to lift the brackets? Otherwise, we keep a bracket. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. Yes, Bolivia requests to leave the brackets referring to the rights of Mother Earth and her jurisprudences, because there are several countries now that have included in their legislations the rights of Mother Earth, the rights of nature. There are several rivers in New Zealand, Canada, and other countries that have been recognized with rights. So therefore, I think it is very important if we are considering in this context the different value systems, and this includes the recognition of the rights of nature and the rights of Mother Earth. So we request to leave the brackets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will then ask if it is agreeable to lift the brackets. Anyone want to keep a bracket? Okay, Nigeria want to keep a bracket in the EU. Okay, I see, I don't need to say that. Then we keep a bracket. So para 36 with its brackets is agreed. Yes, thank you so much. Colleagues, we do have now only 1/2 hour left, half hour, and I would be very pleased if we could complete this document. So I would therefore suggest that I now go section by section, and please only raise your hand if you really need to do something essential and you want to add something that's important. Otherwise, all brackets will be kept. So don't worry about that. You don't need to say you need to keep it or delete, or all brackets will be there. So I then will start with sections by audiences, and I can then ask if we can agree from para 37 until para 41 with all brackets that is now here in the text. South Africa, you had the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. On paragraph 40, I would like to propose the inclusion of the word cities.
Sorry, South Africa. I think include cities is already there, or maybe I misunderstood you, South Africa. South Africa, you had the floor.
Yes, on paragraph 40, I would like you to include the word cities and delete the one that says including cities, just to be consistent with other, with CRP 8 or the discussion on CRP 8. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. Now we captured that. UK, followed by Togo. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And our comment is on paragraph 40 also. We would like to keep the text that is in the square brackets, so to delete the square brackets. We think that using some of the coalitions, the Leaders Pledge for Nature, the High Ambition Coalition, and the Global Ocean Alliance, are all excellent ways for amplifying the messages of the CBD and the importance of biodiversity, both on land and in the ocean, and we would like to see those included within here. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. And I note that. I just said that since we do not have much time, I will not have a discussion on the brackets. So the brackets will be there, so it's still there. Togo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you. I'm looking at para 41. Now, here we have regional cooperation involved. That's very interesting, except that the title is a cause of concern. We were talking about political coalitions. Yes, we know that exists, but we also thought that other possible cooperation could take place regionally as well. So the way it stands now, that doesn't really focus on that. We're talking about regional cooperation. We should like to suggest to talk about regional cooperation and regional and possible regional cooperation. If that already exists, we need to provide concrete examples of that. But in implementation, we could have situations that we have that type of cooperation as well. So, and regional and possible regional cooperation is something I would like to add.
Capture that. So with those additions and the square brackets is kept, I hope we can accept para 37 until para 41. Is so agreeable? Yeah, it's so agreed. Let's move on until next section, section B, specialized audiences of the convention. And let's see if we can agree on para 42 until para 48. And as said before, we don't really have time now to discuss unfortunately, to discuss the brackets, so all brackets will be kept. So if there are an important point, of course, you can raise it. Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for the floor. Malawi would suggest remove of bracket on para 47C. We feel this is very important. Thank you.
Brazil would like to come in on this point? Yeah, please, Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brazil would like to add brackets around subpara D of paragraph 7 on the reference to some initiatives, as we understand that we should avoid listing all possible initiatives, and we'd prefer not have reference to specific initiatives that not all parties might be part of. So we would add brackets around subpara D of paragraph 47. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Togo, you have the floor.
We would like to suggest removing the brackets around little c under 47.
Thank you. And I think we do have a suggestion. So with the deletion of a bracket under 47C and by adding a bracket around 47D, can we agree on the whole section? Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And on para 45, we would also request to keep the last long sentence with a lot of examples between brackets, the last two sentences. So when it starts large associations such as until the end, we should try maybe to work in a very comprehensive list here if we are going to name all. So it could be better not to have the examples. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I put the text in brackets. So with all the amendments now raised, I hope the section can be agreed. I see no opposition, so the section is agreed. Let's move on to section C, Indigenous Peoples and Local Communities. And now we're talking about para 49 until para 51. And we do have some brackets. I will not have a discussion on those brackets now. I hope the text from para 49 until 51 can be acceptable. The brackets will be kept. Russian Federation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under 49, in the fourth line, where it says based on their own systems of knowledge, to remove the brackets there. Thank you.
Thank you, Russian Federation. Okay, with the removal of a bracket as just suggested by Russian Federation 49, can we adopt the section 49 until para 51? I see no opposition, so it's so agreed. Section D, women, is just one para. Can we approve para 52? Yes, it's agreed. And para 53, youth. Can we agree para 53? Senior position is agreed. Let's then move to the section F, the public. And we do have paras 54 until 57. No brackets. I assume we can agree those paras. Senior opposition is so agreed. Let's move on to G, the media. There is no brackets. This is para 58 until para 61. I assume we can agree those paras. I see no opposition is so agreed. Let's move on until the sections branding. 62, and then there is a table. So no brackets in para 62, the table, and para 63. I assume we can agree on this section as well. I see the opposition is so agreed. Let's move on until section Roman 7, open source coordination mechanism and channels and multipliers. There is no brackets in this section 64, 65, 66. I have Australia followed by Togo on my list. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to request this. Could we please just go back briefly to the section C on Indigenous peoples and local communities? There's text in paragraph 50 at the end where we would need or approval and involvement in the text there.
Sorry, what is your point? Sorry, come back.
In the last sentence of paragraph 50, we need the tripartite definition of free, prior and informed consent, which has been used elsewhere in documents here. Perhaps the Secretariat is able to add the tripartite wording for that.
I think the text is there, Australia, or something that you are thinking that might be missing.
So the text I'm looking for is prior and informed consent, free, prior and informed consent, or approval and involvement.
Okay, sorry. Now I got your point. You want to have the full phrase. Yes, we will.
Thank you.
We make sure it's consistent. Sorry for that. I will now go back. I was at. Yes, I was at open source coordination mechanism, channels and multipliers, para 64 until 66. Togo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. I thought that we had got as far as B, Bravo, but it seems we're still on A, social media. I wanted to say something about B, Bravo.
Le paragraphe 70.
Paragraph 70.
Okay, sorry, maybe I'm a bit unclear now. We start, if I just make sure we can approve para 64, 65 and 66, since there are no brackets. 64, 65 and 66. I understand that's acceptable. Is so agreed. And then we continue with A, social media. And social media, para 67, 68, and 69. I assume there are no comments on those. There's no brackets.
Justement, c'est à ce niveau.
So there are no brackets, but in respect of my proposal regarding regional involvement and effective communications, when I was going through it, I found that that was a significant clause, so I'd like to present Togo's proposal. And maybe it will have to go into brackets so that the other parties can give their views. So it's the involvement of other conventions and the various events where the conferences can support communications. So at the regional level, we could also include a new paragraph after 70 ABC through L. After that, we would have new paragraph 71. New paragraph 71, regional events on environmental themes and regional information bulletins. That would be the heading. So regional events on environmental themes and regional information bulletins. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Togo. And as you suggest, I think we can put that text in brackets so parties have time to look at it. So there are no comments on 67, 68, 69. I think that's agreeable. So agreed. And then we do have B, and we do have a suggestion by Togo as a new para.
Regional 70 becomes paragraph 71.
Yeah. A new 71, and you can read. Secretary can read it out.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the proposal by Togo is to add a new paragraph 71 after the events that would say regional events on environmental themes and regional information bulletins. And we will put that in brackets now as it's just introduced at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that addition, can we agree on para 70 until 73? Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We strongly support the mentioning of the IUCN World Conservation Congress, and we don't see any reason why this paragraph should be not included, and therefore we would like to remove the brackets there on section 70I. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. So, with if there are no opposition to remove the brackets, I suggest we remove the brackets around IUCN World Conservation Congress. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd prefer to retain the brackets around the IUCN World Conservation Congress. We understand that this section should highlight initiatives, intergovernmental initiatives, and we prefer to have only reference to those with the widest participation, universal participation of parties to the convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Then we keep a bracket. So with that, we do have, can I agree 70 until 73 with the addition by Togo in brackets as well? I see no opposition, so agreed. Let's move on to section C, champion, messenger of peace and goodwill ambassadors. No brackets. The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a small proposal for paragraph 74, where we propose to delete the last line because we should not prejudge further discussions on the budget and financial matters. So in paragraph 74, 75, apologies. The line funding will be voluntary contributions from parties and other interested actors. That normally is language that we would rather reserve for the budget discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. The EU. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding paragraph 74, we would add brackets around WWF and IUCN for the time being, along the lines of my previous intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. We do have a suggested bracket in 74 and a suggestion to delete the last sentence in 75. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposal by the EU for paragraph 75 needs to go into brackets. Thank you.
Okay, we suggested deletion by the EU is also in brackets. With that, I understand that 74 and 75 can be agreeable. I see no opposition is so agreed. Let's move to section D. There are some brackets, but I will not have a discussion about the brackets. Can I presume that para 76 until 78 can be agreeable with the brackets? I see no opposition, so agreed. Let's move on to section key messaging. Can I approve the whole section key messaging? No. Argentina followed by Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. So paragraph 39, line 3 contains a reference to nature-based solutions. As we know, we are all discussing about that in target 8, so we would suggest to delete that reference. Thank you. Paragraph 79, line 3, after agenda and its sustainable development goals, comma, nature-based solutions, comma, the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. It's actually a bit weird to have it included there because we have clear initiatives by intergovernmental UN bodies and a reference to a concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. Maybe for the sake of time, I just put this text in brackets. Brazil followed by Mexico. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to support the previous statement by Argentina, and if it's not possible to delete it, then we would prefer to add brackets around nature-based solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will add a square bracket around nature-based solutions. And with that addition, the only addition here is that nature-based solutions will be in brackets. Otherwise, can we agree on the whole section? Russian Federation followed by Paraguay. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to, in 83B, we would like to remove the brackets. Thank you.
Paraguay followed by the EU.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a clarification. I see that in 83D, there is an end bracket, but there's not a starting bracket. So it would be important to have the starting bracket there. Does it start at the beginning of a sentence or just that applying human rights-based approach? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a typo. Let's see. The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First of all, we note that there's a redundancy because paragraph 81 is a repetition of 83G, but perhaps that can be cleaned up simply afterwards as editorial change. In paragraph 83D, we will propose a bit different wording to really make the linkages clear. So when it's about reducing inequalities, applying a human rights-based approach, we would add as important conditions for achieving the 2050 vision for biodiversity, instead of the wording that we have now. So it would end with as important conditions for achieving the 2050 vision of for biodiversity.
Thank you, EU. I will add that text in brackets because we don't have time to discuss it, but I will add the text in brackets. First, I would like to ask if the proposal from the Russian Federation to delete the brackets on B, can that be acceptable? Please take down your hand if you think it's acceptable. That's good. We can delete the brackets around B. So, colleagues, I have 6 minutes left. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Colleague. We want to see reflected in the paragraph 80, I mean the second paragraph in the section 8, after it also needs to be consistent with, include different knowledge systems, comma, including the, and go as it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Colombia. I think we can add that text. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm sorry to take the floor once again. Just for the sake of consistency, in paragraph 82, we would suggest keeping the second sentence in brackets, given the fact that it refers to behavior change, behavioral control, and behavioral intentions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. We keep that text in brackets. The EU followed by UK.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I understand correctly, also the table 3 with themes for messaging is part of what we discuss now. And in that table, we would perhaps nuance the second general theme a little bit by deleting the word all. And then a bit further down, we would propose to delete the proposal to have bio-innovation holds the key to support poverty eradication efforts. But actually now I see it's within brackets, and if we don't discuss the brackets, then of course it can simply be staying in brackets.
Thank you, the EU. UK?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for letting us eat into your 6 minutes. In paragraph 82, little m, we would like to insert subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities. That's the phrase that's in line with the text that we're using in CRP 8 in the other parts of the discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, we will make sure the text is aligned. With these changes that we now have discussed, can we agree on the section key messaging? UK, you still want the floor?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you. I think it's agreeable. It's so agreed. Let's move on. And can I, as a whole, ask if we can agree para 84 until the end? And no, please note all the square brackets will be kept. I see no opposition. Is so agreed. That means. Oh, sorry, I was so quick. Paraguay, you had the floor. And we have 3 minutes left.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know we're trying to do this expeditionally, but since we are talking about developing country and its small island developing states, Paraguay would also request the inclusion of landlocked developing countries here. It is also a category recognized by the UN. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paraguay. We'll make sure that we add that as well. Yeah, thank you so much. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a last point from us. In the section 10 on resources, could we put a bracket around paragraph 88 little a, where it talks about additional resources being required? This will, of course, need to be discussed under the budget discussion when we get to COP15. So we think we should have that discussion there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. UK, please note that all subparagraphs is in brackets. You can see that the bracket starts before little a, where resources needed. So it's everything in brackets. So I think that is acceptable. Okay. I see no more comments, and I understand that all these last sections until the end of this CRP is acceptable. Is so agreed? So thank you so much. And yes, distinguished delegates, thank you so much. Thank you for bearing with me. Sorry if I went too quick. We will now produce an L document for this item for consideration at a later date. And distinguished delegate, we now need to ask the Secretary for some announcement, and then we need to close. Secretary, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you'll recall that in the subs plenary yesterday, under the discussion item 6 on marine, consideration of CRPs 2 and 4 was suspended, and the Secretariat was asked to include in an L document compilations, a compilation of submissions or proposals received by midnight last night. That document is under preparation, and we hope to make it available this evening. In addition, there was a call for some space for informal consultations among parties on marine issues. And we have therefore designated Sal 9, Hall 9, to be available for this purpose for those parties that wish to have informal consultations among themselves. And this space will be available from 6 p.m. this evening and also from 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Colleagues, thank you for all cooperation during this session. This meeting with SBI Plenary is now closed. Thank you.